Hi, my name is Chris Dixon. I'm the co-founder of Hunch. Welcome to Startup Sherpa, where we talk to founders of startups. Today we have Kevin Systrom, the co-founder of Instagram. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So Instagram has been a big success. It's a sort of a photo sharing app. Maybe you can talk more about it. We've had over 1 million registered users in a pretty short time.
Yeah, so Instagram is currently an iPhone app that lets you share your story in the world. You can snap photos on the go, filter those photos through I think we have 13 filters now, and then post that out to both the Instagram network and I believe we have 5 different networks we support, so like Flickr, Facebook, Tumblr, etc. And it's a really fun way to share kind of your day and what's going on. And what we've seen is since October 6th when we launched, about 3 months later we had, it was like over 1 million registered users, and that's continued to grow very, very quickly. And I think what's exciting about it is that people have really, become really excited about sharing their lives, but also bigger folks like media outlets have started sharing news, like NPR shares shots of what's happening all around the world. So it's become this like visual network of consuming things around the world as they happen. It's really exciting.
Yeah, well, congratulations. Can you talk a little bit about like how you kind of came up with the idea and the history of the company?
Sure. So, I mean, really it all starts back in college when it was like sophomore year at Stanford. And we were all sitting around in the dorm room, and people would take photos on digital cameras all the time at college. Facebook photos didn't exist at that time. And I created something called Photobox that was simply just a way to share photos between people in dorms, because like you'd always have to email out big files and ask people where the files were.
What year was this?
2000. So I graduated 2006, so it would have been 2004 maybe.
Okay. So
yeah.
It was like pre-Flickr or?
It might have been pre-Flickr actually,
yeah, okay.
Or maybe like right when Flickr was coming out. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, like this was not the idea for Instagram. It merely shows that like. Early on, I was kind of thinking about like how do people share images really quickly, and that was called Photobox. Nothing ever really came of it except for in my fraternity, and we used it a little bit. But Facebook Photos came out while I was in college, and people started using that. And when we started this company, it was called Bourbon Inc. first, BURBN. And we never really launched it publicly. But part of it was the idea of sharing photos on the go. But that was like one slice of many. There were things like hangout points, like when you checked in with a friend, you got points for doing that. You could comment on streams, you could post videos. But as we worked on that, we realized that we were doing, in my opinion, far too much. And when my co-founder Mike joined, we sat down, and I still remember this one very like pivotal day for us. We looked at each other and we said, I think we're doing too much with this. And that was the day we decided to cut everything except for photos.
Yeah.
That was one of the hardest decisions I think we had to make as a company. Like it was really hard to do that.
It's actually a really, I think, phenomenal case, because almost every other pivot that I know about sort of happened post-launch. I mean, you were sort of right. I mean, you were, I guess, testing with friends, but like, so how did you how did you sort of get enough data, or I don't know what, to sort of make the decision?
So
was it just instinct, or?
Right. I think that's really the crux of it. Is you asked how do we get enough data? Yeah. And one of the things, and if I were giving advice,
like if you read the minimum viable product people, like they always talk about you launch, you get data, like et cetera, but you didn't even launch, so you didn't really have the data. So
it's funny because the question is like, how much do you have to launch to get data? And we had probably like 150 people using Bourbon at that time. That's really the crux of it, though, is like getting enough data, right? And when do you have enough data? When do you decide to do something new? And I'm not sure that I could give an exact moment where I felt fully confident. It was really like a leap of faith for us, because we believed that we were onto something cool, but we needed a way to go to market. Like if we just launched with yet another check-in app, I think it was going to go out and people were going to look at it and say, well, I used one of these 90 other services. And we had heard that Facebook was going to do it. And we just said, like, what we're about to launch isn't necessarily unique and isn't necessarily like our core passion. Like both Mike and I are photographers. And we were actually talking about doing two things. One was going the photos route, and the other was going the plans route, because we had plans were part of the app as well. But at the end of the day, it was about having something unique to put out in the world, and also following our passion and building something we believed to be uniquely suited to do as people. But I wouldn't say there was any day where we were like, this isn't going well. In fact, it was to the contrary. People were really excited about Bourbon. They were telling their friends. They were really excited about it.
So you took something that people were really excited about, and you just
crushed it. Done.
Okay,
that's why it was so scary. It was like you're taking something that your friends, and by the way, like most of these people were like our best friends. People who we hung out, like we organized our social lives using this thing. And to this day, I think like maybe only 5 or 6 of those people, the original people on Bourbon, use Instagram like on a daily basis. So Seth Godin likes to say like fire half of your customers, right? We unfortunately we laid off our fan base, and it was heart-wrenching really, because people were complaining. They'd email us like, we left Bourbon going, but they were like, why are you working on this other thing now? So as an entrepreneur, you're sitting there and you're like, we're doing the right thing, we're doing the right thing, we're doing the right thing. And
so how long was that period then between when you did that and then you launched and sort of knew that it was working?
That's a good question. You mean like when we launched? Well, yeah. So you
sort of pivoted, and then you sort of, I guess you launched in October, and sort of immediately it started kind of growing. Or
so 8 weeks before we launched is when we wrote the first line of code for that iPhone client.
I see.
And we basically just shut ourselves up in Dogpatch Labs. Didn't leave very much. Our lunches were like go to the sandwich shop, come back, one hand's coding, one hand's eating. And we gave it to a few people, but what's interesting is that like a different group of people started really loving Instagram. And that was, again, 2 months of just iteration and cleaning things up and creating some of these filters that we have. And then we launched, and that first day, I expected to get like 2,500 signups.
And how'd you launch? Do you like get a blog post on TechCrunch, or you just tweet it out?
That's a good question. We had a bunch of friends who were using it and tweeting out to a bunch of people, and I think it created this like pull, like this tension that people really wanted to get it and try it out. And we launched. I pressed the button at like 12:15 that morning, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. It may take 3 hours to show up in the App Store. We'll get some sleep. We'll show up at work at like 6 a.m. Mike and I both biked down. It was like pitch black. But when I pressed the button, within like 5 minutes, it was available in the store. And we looked at the logs, and all these people started signing up with like, French email addresses, like .fr and .hk and Asian languages, et cetera.
How did they find out about it?
I have no idea. But what's interesting is that
it's like that scene in The Social Network. It's like,
right?
You got 2,000 hits. No, you got that 20,000.
Right. It was an interesting moment for us because I hadn't thought at all about international users. I was saying to myself like, oh, it'll be fine. No one will discover it. And then I'm like, of course. Like it's like 4 p.m. over there, and we said we were going to do something on Wednesdays. So people are like, searching the App Store for Instagram. We didn't get any sleep that night. We just like had to monitor things. I think I might have like napped for 30 minutes, but we showed up at 6 a.m. and as it happens in the press world, people time things and they press go live at 9 a.m. or whatever. So everyone's stories hit at the exact same time. And this is an experience I'll never forget, is sitting there and just the server crumbling, just like done, like not working at all. This is our big launch. We're really excited about it. Nothing's working. And I've never felt so like sick ever. Like it was like, what are we doing, right? We were able to get it back up after some couple hours of dealing with things, but then Gruber tweeted and then it went down again. It was an interesting moment in the history of Instagram because at that moment I looked over to Mike and I said I think we've created something new and different and interesting that
was it just that you just didn't expect that? I mean, was it just way more traffic than you had planned for, or was it just like you'd made some mistakes in the design of the architecture, or?
No, so I mean, it was very much the former, which is no one expects that amount of attention. And honestly, you hear everyone say don't optimize from the beginning, and I was saying to someone yesterday that I think it's true. Like, you can't optimize from the beginning because you don't know how it's going to go. It caught us off guard, and we were new to it. Neither of us had really scaled a service before, but the amount we've learned in the last 3 months is night and day. And I feel like now we're well prepared for it. And of course, every service has their growing pains. But I was talking to Jack Dorsey, and he was like, compared to the beginning of Twitter, you guys are doing just fine. There was this vote of confidence of someone who's been through it many times before that made me feel like, okay, we're doing okay.
The last time I saw you, I was out, and Katerina Fake and I, who's a co-founder of Hunch, we tweeted out that we were going to have a Hunch meetup at some random bar, and that's where we met. That's where I last saw you, right?
Yep.
And I guess sort of the serendipity of California here. Like, so it turned out that was you met a bunch of random people there that were helpful in the company.
That night was really. Looking back, I have to say there's like one reason why you live in California and you start a company here. It doesn't mean it can't happen in a dorm room at Harvard. It doesn't mean it can't happen in Paris. It doesn't mean it can't happen in Brazil. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
One of the perks of living in San Francisco is you can't throw a rock without hitting a VC, without hitting someone connected in the tech world that may or may not get excited about what you're doing. That Hunch thing was very much like, we had this product called Bourbon, and I had been working on it for a couple weeks and figured I'd show it to a few people, and that night was transformational for us because not only did we meet you and Katerina, got a little feedback there, but we also happened to meet the folks from Andreessen Horowitz and Steve from Baseline, who ended up being our first investors. So it was one of these crazy little moments where you meet a bunch of people and they end up being partners going forward, and no deal was made at that party. It was just like you meet the people that end up being partners down the line, and I think had it not been for that party, we wouldn't have really met the people that allowed us to get started. It's funny how things like that happen here. I mean, we all have our founding stories of like how you met your investors and your co-founders, et cetera. But that one moment, I think, really set us on a trajectory to getting started.
Yeah, I think that's like people talk about New York becoming a startup hub, and I think when I thought it started sort of changing was one day I was at Starbucks, and I was talking to an investor, and he's like, "Oh, we should whisper, someone." And I'm like, "No, it's New York. No one's gonna." And then, like half an hour into it, the guy next to us says, "Oh, are you guys so and so and so and so?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, maybe New York's really changing." Like,
I know.
Because it's like California is like you can't, everywhere you walk, it's like you hear people talking about APIs and like,
We worked at Dogpatch Labs, which was fantastic for us because I remember when we got started, Mike is from Brazil, and we needed we needed a visa for him to work, and we needed a physical location. So we got started at Dogpatch Labs, and that became our home. And we didn't leave there, and they were fantastic to us to get started. But we would go across the road to Crossroads Cafe, which is kind of like everyone in the startup world in San Francisco knows about this place because of Flickr, having their meetups there, and we'd hang out there and we'd have conversations with VCs, kind of candidly or whatever, and we'd turn around, and after we're done with the meeting, someone would stand up and be like, "Hey, so I was listening to that entire thing and think it's really interesting, and I'm also a VC," and so. There's this like, there's nowhere safe except for your own conference room, right? And even then, like if you share, like we're sharing an office now, it's like, you have this conference room with windows, everyone can see everything. So but I guess the point is that starting a company here still has its advantages, but I'm really excited to see what's happening in New York and internationally, frankly.
Hopefully what we're seeing is sort of the ethos of Silicon Valley spreading around to other places.